Most people who garden seriously make one mistake every single July. Not a planting mistake, not a soil mistake, a timing mistake, and it quietly cost them an entire second harvest they didn't even know was possible. I learned this the hard way. A few years back, I spent the first 2 weeks of July doing what most gardeners do, tidying up spent spring beds, pulling old tomato cages, telling myself the season was basically winding down. I had this whole half-empty raised bed just sitting there baking in the sun, and I kept thinking, it's too late to plant anything meaningful now. So I didn't. That October, my neighbor, who gardens about 30 feet away from me, walked over with a basket. Fresh kale, carrots, a fat bunch of scallions, broccoli heads so dense they looked almost store-bought. All of it from seed she'd put in the ground back in July. While I was putting away my tools, she was starting her best harvest of the year. I haven't made that mistake since. If you walk outside right now and your garden feels like it's winding down, like the real growing season is behind you, I want you to hear this. The gardeners who end up with the most productive fall harvests aren't doing anything dramatically different from you. They're just planting right now, in July, while everyone else waits. Today we're going through 15 crops you can get in the ground this month. Some of these are obvious. Some will surprise you. And one of them, we'll get to it near the end, is something most gardeners don't discover until they've already lost 2 or 3 seasons wondering why their fall garden never quite comes together. One more thing before we start. There's a crop on this list where what you do the night before planting is the difference between a thriving fall harvest and a bed that produces nothing. Most guides never mention it. We'll cover exactly what to do when we get there. If practical gardening content that actually respects your time and your effort sounds like what you're looking for, subscribe. That's all we do here. Let's get into it. Number 1, radishes. I want to start here because most people underestimate radishes, and the reason they underestimate them has nothing to do with flavor. Here's what most gardeners don't know. Yes, radishes are fast. 22 to 28 days from seed to harvest. Yes, they're easy. But the real reason experienced gardeners always have radishes in a July bed has nothing to do with eating them. Radishes are soil workers. Their roots drive down through compacted summer soil and physically break it apart, essentially prepping the ground for whatever you plant after them. So even in a bed where the soil has been baking and hardening all summer, a round of radishes quietly fixes the problem while you harvest them. 2 jobs at once. No extra effort. Sow them half an inch deep, about an inch apart. Cherry bell and French breakfast both handle summer conditions well. Keep the soil moist through germination, which happens fast, 3 to 5 days, and in under a month you've got a harvest and better soil waiting for your next planting. There's something almost addictive about pulling your first summer radish. That clean, sharp snap when you break one in half. The smell, almost like fresh pepper and wet earth at the same time. It sounds like a small thing, but after a slow July garden, that first harvest reminds you why you do this. Number 2, bush beans. Here's something that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it. July planted bush beans often taste better than the beans you planted in spring. Not slightly better, noticeably better. Beans that mature in the gradually cooling temperatures of early fall develop more slowly, and that slower development produces pods that are sweeter, more tender, and more flavorful than anything that rushed to maturity in summer heat. Your spring beans were fine. Your fall beans are going to be genuinely good. You need 50 to 60 days from seed to harvest, so the window is open right now in most U.S. zones. Direct sow 2 inches deep, 6 inches apart. Don't start them indoors. Beans don't transplant well, and it's not necessary. Water after sowing, and then mostly leave them alone. The payoff is a fall harvest of something that tastes better than what you grew in spring, and most of your neighbors won't have a single bean left on their plants. Number 3, cucumbers. I know what some of you might be thinking. Cucumbers in July? Aren't those a spring crop? Yes. And also, here's the part most guides skip entirely. Cucumbers actually prefer to germinate in warm soil. They're one of the few crops that genuinely benefits from summer conditions at the start. Warm soil speeds germination. The plant establishes quickly, and then as temperatures ease in late summer, it hits its peak production window right on schedule. Pick a fast-maturing variety. Straight 8 and Space Master both come in around 55 to 60 days. Give them something to climb, and you'll save space while dramatically improving airflow. The one thing cucumbers are unforgiving about: inconsistent watering. Wet, dry cycles are exactly why cucumbers go bitter. Consistent moisture is the specific variable that separates crisp, mild cucumbers from ones that taste like disappointment. Fresh cucumbers in September, when most people's vines are long finished. That's what consistent watering in July buys you. Number 4, summer squash and zucchini. I already know some of you are smiling at this one, because you grew zucchini in spring, and at some point, you had more than you could possibly use. Fair. But here's why it belongs on this list. And it's not just about getting more squash. Spring-planted zucchini has a lifespan problem. By midsummer, vine borers have usually moved in. Powdery mildew starts spreading across the leaves, and production slows or stops entirely. A July planting sidesteps the worst of those pest pressures completely. The plant comes into production in the cooler air of early fall, exactly when your first plant is fading, and gives you fresh squash through October. This is succession planting, working exactly the way it's supposed to. One plant picks up where the other left off. Sow directly an inch deep, 24 to 36 inches between plants. Black Beauty and Patio Star are both reliable for summer starts. Harvest frequently, and harvest young, small squash tastes better and signals the plant to keep producing. Number 5, kale. Let me reframe kale for you, because most people think of it as a spring crop and plant it too late to get what it's actually capable of giving them. Kale planted in July doesn't just survive fall. It improves in fall. When temperatures drop and the plant experiences its first frost, something genuinely interesting happens. The plant converts starches into sugars as a kind of cold protection mechanism. The result is kale that is noticeably sweeter, more tender, and more enjoyable than anything you'd harvest in warmer conditions. The frost doesn't hurt it. The frost completes it. Picture stepping outside on a cold October morning, the kind where you can see your breath, and snapping off a deep green kale leaf that's been through 2 or 3 light frosts. You can almost smell the earthiness and sweetness together before you even bring it inside. That flavor doesn't exist in spring kale. It only comes from a plant that's had time to be changed by the cold. But here's the timing constraint. To get that October and November harvest, you need to plant now. Sow a 1/4 inch deep, 12 to 18 inches apart. Lacinato and Red Russian are both excellent for fall production. Keep the root zone cool with a layer of mulch while the weather is still warm. Get this in the ground now, and you could realistically be harvesting fresh kale all the way into December in many zones. Number 6, Swiss chard. I want to keep moving because we're building towards some of the more surprising crops on this list. But Swiss chard earns its spot here for one specific reason. It is the most heat-tolerant leafy green on this entire list. While lettuce wilts and spinach stalls in summer conditions, Swiss chard just keeps going. Plant it now. Harvest outer leaves continuously, and it will produce all the way through hard freezes without slowing down. Sow seeds 1 inch deep, 6 inches apart. Bright Lights is a beautiful, multicolored variety that looks like someone painted the stems, deep crimson, bright yellow, soft orange, and it tastes just as good as it looks. Low maintenance, long season, continuous harvest. For a July planting, it is genuinely hard to beat. And now, we've reached the part of this list I mentioned at the beginning. The next few crops are where most gardeners lose entire seasons without ever understanding why. One of them has a trick almost nobody teaches. Stay with me. Number 7, spinach. Here's the problem with July spinach. that most guides never explain. Spinach wants to germinate in cool soil. Temperatures above about 75 degrees at the soil surface can cause it to stall, bolt prematurely, or simply refuse to sprout. Most gardeners try once, get a bare patch of soil 2 weeks later, and conclude that summer spinach is impossible. It's not impossible. There's one step missing. The night before you plant, put your spinach seeds in the refrigerator. That's it. This brief cold exposure breaks the heat dormancy blocking germination and dramatically improves your success rate in warm summer soil. 30 seconds of effort the evening before planting. That's the entire intervention. After that, sow half an inch deep in a spot with afternoon shade. Keep the soil surface consistently moist. Spinach seeds will not push through dry crust, not even once. As temperatures drop in late August, your plants will visibly accelerate almost overnight. Bloomsdale Longstanding and Tyee are both reliable for fall production. Add a simple row cover in November, and you extend the harvest well past what most gardeners think is possible. One night in the refrigerator, between a failed planting and fresh spinach, all the way through fall. Most guides never tell you that. Number 8. Lettuce. I want to share a habit that separates gardeners who have fresh salad greens for 3 or 4 months straight from the ones who have them for 3 or 4 weeks. Succession planting. With lettuce, it's almost absurdly simple. Instead of sowing one large batch, sow a small amount every 2 weeks, starting right now in July. Each planting matures about 2 weeks after the last one, and the result is a continuous harvest from early fall all the way into November and beyond with row covers. Variety selection matters here. Skip heat-sensitive types and go straight to Nevada, Jericho, or any red leaf variety. These are significantly more bolt-resistant than standard butterhead types. Sow shallowly, barely covered, in afternoon shade. Keep the soil moist through germination. The first time you do this, and pull fresh lettuce in late October, crunchy, cold from the night air, more flavorful than anything you'd buy in a bag. You'll understand why this is one of the few gardening habits that genuinely becomes permanent once you try it. Number 9. Beets. Beets give you more than most people realize from a single planting. The root is obviously the main event, but the greens, the leaves growing above ground, are equally edible, equally nutritious, and ready to harvest weeks before the roots are. 1 seed, 2 harvests, 1 bed. July planted beets hit their stride in October, and cooler fall temperatures improve the flavor meaningfully. Sow half an inch deep, 3 inches apart. Here's a detail that trips up a lot of first-time beet growers. What looks like a single beet seed is actually a cluster of multiple seeds. If you don't thin early, you end up with a crowd of stunted roots that never properly size up. Thin to 1 strong plant per spot as soon as seedlings appear. Detroit Dark Red and Chioggia are both reliable and widely available. Loose, well-amended soil makes a real difference. 2 minutes working in some compost before sowing, and your beetroots will thank you come October. Number 10. Carrots. Let me tell you the actual reason most gardeners fail with carrots, because it's probably not what you think. Most people assume the problem is skill. Too much attention, not enough attention, wrong soil amendments, wrong variety. But in reality, the single most common reason a carrot planting produces nothing is this. The soil surface dried out during the 10 to 14 days it takes for germination. Carrot seeds are tiny. They sit close to the surface. One dry afternoon during that window, and the seeds die silently, underground, and nothing ever comes up. The gardener walks out 2 weeks later to an empty bed and concludes they can't grow carrots. But it was one variable: moisture, the entire time. Keep the surface consistently damp for 2 weeks. That's the whole secret to consistent carrot germination. Beyond that, loose, deep, rock-free soil is non-negotiable. Carrots fork and twist in compacted ground. If your soil is heavy, a raised bed is genuinely worth considering. Nantes and Danvers are both excellent for fall planting. Get them in now. Because a fall carrot pulled straight from cool October soil, still faintly warm from your hand, sweet enough to eat standing in the garden, tastes like something a grocery store has never sold you. Number 11. Turnips. Here's a crop that's almost criminally underrated in modern gardening content. And the reason is simple. People think of turnips as old-fashioned, something their grandparents grew. Not exciting. But consider what you actually get. Turnips mature in 45 to 60 days, one of the fastest root vegetables on this list. They sweeten after frost. The roots are delicious roasted until their edges caramelize and the inside turns almost buttery. And the greens are edible and ready weeks before the roots. Another double harvest from a single seed. They're also cold hardy enough to stay in the ground well into late fall in most zones, which means a July planting gives you a harvest window that extends far longer than most people expect. Sow half an inch deep, thin to 4 to 6 inches apart as they grow. Purple top white globe is the standard for good reason. Reliable, flavorful, and genuinely easy. Number 12. Arugula. Arugula in summer gets a bad reputation. Most people grow it in spring, find it aggressively bitter and peppery, and don't go back. But here's what those people didn't know. Arugula's sharpness is directly tied to the temperature it grows in. Hot conditions produce intensely bitter leaves. Cooler conditions produce something genuinely mild and enjoyable, almost nutty, a little peppery in the best way. A July planting that matures into September and October is a completely different eating experience than spring arugula. Here's the specific tip that makes the difference. Plant in afternoon shade, if at all possible. Morning sun, afternoon shade. That reduced heat exposure during the hottest part of the day noticeably improves the flavor at harvest in ways that are hard to fully explain until you taste the difference yourself. Sow thickly, 1/4 inch deep. Germination is fast, 5 to 7 days, and you can begin harvesting outer leaves in as little as 3 weeks. Astro and Rocket are both excellent for fall production. Number 13. Broccoli. We're getting into the crops that require the most planning and deliver the most payoff. Broccoli needs 60 to 80 days to mature, which means you need to work backwards from your first expected frost date. In most zones, transplanting in mid-July puts you right in the window. Transplants, either from a nursery or starts you've begun indoors, will establish faster than direct sown seed and give you more control over timing. Here's something worth knowing. Broccoli that matures in fall is genuinely different from spring broccoli. The heads are denser, the florets are tighter, and the flavor, especially after a light frost, is sweeter and more complex than anything that developed in spring warmth. Waltham 29 and Belstar are both reliable fall varieties. Space transplants 18 inches apart, water them in thoroughly, and mulch around the base to keep the root zone cool while the weather is still warm. The effort here is slightly higher than most other crops on this list. The reward is proportionally higher too. Number 14. Cilantro. If cilantro has beaten you before, bolting in the heat before you could use more than a small handful, I want you to understand something important. It's not your fault. Cilantro is a cool season herb being planted at the wrong time by most of the people who grow it. It bolts in summer heat, almost by design. The plant senses high temperatures and rushes to flower and seed before conditions get worse. And there you are, watching a beautiful plant go bitter and leggy right before you needed it most. July planting exists specifically to fix this. So now, let it establish quietly through late summer, and watch it genuinely flourish when September and October cool things down. One tip worth knowing, cilantro seeds are technically seed clusters, 2 seeds in one hull. Gently crush them before planting and germination rates improve noticeably. Sow shallowly, keep moist, and let the cooler fall air do the rest. The moment when fresh cilantro is finally ready, that bright, almost citrusy green fragrance when you brush the leaves, and you realize you timed it right this time. That moment feels different than most gardening wins, because you finally understood the plant instead of fighting it. And now, number 15. This is the crop I mentioned at the beginning. The one most gardeners don't discover until they've already lost 2 or 3 fall seasons wondering what's missing from their garden. Number 15. Green onions and scallions. Green onions sound simple, and they are simple. But here's what makes them genuinely remarkable as a July planting, and why experienced gardeners almost always have them tucked somewhere in the garden. They're ready in 60 to 70 days. They grow in almost any soil. They fit along the edge of any existing bed without disrupting anything else. But none of that is the real reason they're on this list. Green onions are one of the most effective companion plants in the home garden. They naturally deter aphids and certain soil-borne pests, which makes them valuable neighbors for nearly everything else we've talked about today. Tuck them along the border of your lettuce bed. Plant a short row next to your kale. Weave them between your beet seedlings. They're doing quiet pest management work while you do nothing extra. Multiple jobs, no additional effort, no extra space required. Evergreen Hardy White and Tokyo Long White are both excellent for fall production. Sow a 1/4 inch deep, about 1 inch apart. Water consistently, and otherwise leave them alone. And in October, when you walk out to the garden and pull a fresh bunch of scallions, still cool from the night air, smelling sharp and clean and alive in a way that packaged grocery store scallions simply don't, and you bring them inside to finish a soup or top a simple dish, there's a specific kind of quiet satisfaction in that moment. Not because it was complicated, not because anyone will congratulate you for it. Because back in July, when most gardeners had already mentally moved on from the season, you made a small decision. You put something in the ground. You thought a few months ahead, when it would have been easier not to. And now, standing in your October garden with food you grew yourself, you're living the result of that decision. That's what July planting actually is. It's not about the crops. It's about becoming the kind of gardener who knows the season isn't over when everyone else thinks it is. So there you have it. 15 crops. 1 month. An entire second harvest most gardeners leave on the table every single year. The gardeners with the most productive falls aren't working harder. They're thinking ahead while everyone else is waiting. They're sowing in July. They're using the refrigerator trick with spinach. They're succession planting lettuce every 2 weeks. They're tucking green onions into every available edge. Small decisions made right now that pay off quietly and consistently all the way through November. Pick the crops that fit your zone and your space. Get them in the ground. Don't make the mistake I made that July, standing next to an empty raised bed, telling myself it was too late. It wasn't too late then. It's not too late now. And if you want to make sure your soil is actually ready to support everything we planted today, I've got a video on quickly improving summer garden soil before planting that pairs directly with this one. Most gardeners skip that step and wonder why results are inconsistent. It's worth a few minutes of your time before you head outside. Drop a comment below. Which crop on this list did you least expect to see here? I'm genuinely curious what surprised you. And your answer might be exactly what helps someone else watching figure out where to start. We'll see you in the next one.